So hey everyone, today we've got Yasmin with us and we're really excited to have her here, and we'll explain a little bit more why later. But first of all, Yasmin, hi, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
We are very excited to have you with us today. Do you want to just introduce yourself and give us a little bit about what it is you do and what you're up to in the world?
Okay, so as Charlotte said, my name is Yasmin and I am a financial coach. So I help people feel safe with their money and feel saving up and investing. I'm currently doing a master's in economics where I'm specializing in, you guessed right, finance. So that's what I'm up to.
Amazing.
Nice. So how is, tell us a little bit about your background as well. How has your journey led you to where you are now?
Oh, wow. I think it's about ever since I was little. I was always been told to be responsible with money, and I never had an issue with it really, because money was not made as something that was dangerous. So I never felt uncomfortable with it. I never got punished for misusing my money. I was just told how to deal with it whenever you overspend, you know. So yeah, I think it's my family background that led me to where I am today. I come from a family where a lot of the men are bookkeepers or have worked in a bank. So yeah.
That's brilliant, because so many people, including ourselves, had the opposite upbringing when it comes to money, right? And our understanding of finance and the fact that, like you quite rightly said, is what you do is make people feel safe, because for a lot of people, money's scary to the point it's stressing people out big time.
Yeah.
So we actually surveyed our audience when we was doing some questionnaires just to learn a bit more about them. And 72% of them said that finance was their number one stressor, which is one of the reasons why we've invited you on the show to share your wonderful words of wisdom with them. And one of the things that we talked about before was that the stress then triggers people spending beyond their means. So tell us your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to people overspending and stress being the main factor, we have to know, why are they stressing to the point where they are overspending? That's what I look for. I always look for the root cause. And sometimes I find out that people just want to fit in. It's a natural part of us as human beings to feel like we fit in a group. It's the innate part in us that wants to survive. And it's nothing to be ashamed of. But as the legend Brené Brown has said, we shall not strive to in, but to belong. And with belonging comes acceptance of who you really are. So in the process of overspending, you might take a look on what makes you who you are. And because the relationship you have with your money is directly the relationship you have with yourself.
Yeah, and we're going to tap into that in a while, because I love that idea. Is something we talk about all the time, is that, you know, our external world is a projection of what's going on inside of us. Something that I want to pull out that you said there is that when you work with clients, you're actually helping them pull out the root cause of why they're stressing in the first place. Because obviously, for sure, you have like hundreds of practical tips you could probably share as to how to just stop overspending, like having a budget and all these different things. And that's all well and good, but it's almost like putting like a band-aid over a bullet wound when it comes to treating the symptom and not the root. So what would you say to somebody that's listening to this, who is maybe experiencing this overspending that is being triggered by their stress, but that then is making them stress out even more?
It makes them stress out even more, because once you overspend, it becomes a habit where maybe you go out is 2, and next time again is even more. And before you know it, you have a whole closet of shoes you don't use. But the thing about stress is if it's not treated immediately, it will just build itself up and it'll be stored in the body, and you will end up seeing physical effects of it, psychological effects of it, emotional effects of it. And when it comes to finances and financial decision making and how to deal with your money, it's more emotional than anything. It's not about knowing math. I know a lot of people saying, I don't know my math, I can't make my money add up. But it's not math, it's your behavior, it's how you treat your money. So
how do you advise or coach, let's say, your clients and anybody that could be listening to this in terms of where to start when it comes to identifying maybe those emotional triggers, or even just them getting to the root cause of their stressors? What kind of tools do you use with them?
well, first of all, I like to ask them what's going on in their lives and what's happening that is making them have this financial issue that they have. And what I start by doing is slowly making them aware what kind of problems they have. And then comes the harder part about when you have all this information now, are you willing to accept it?
Yeah.
And once they are willing to accept it, some people, it takes a lot of time. They will come and fight you with their claws. They will defend themselves in terms of their money decision making. So that's really the hard part. I would say that after that, when we come to finding out how we can attack this and what actions they need to take, and that's where the practical part comes in, and I can truly help them on that practical level. But the hard part is always the transformation towards getting change implemented.
Absolutely. And one of the first things we ask anybody we work with is, are you willing to do whatever it takes to make the changes you claim you want? And some people will
Yes.
honestly put their hands up and say no. And it's like, okay, well, maybe you're not ready for this kind of experience yet. And I love what you shared there about like awareness, because until we can connect with what's actually happening in our immediate reality, in what we perceive is happening in our environment, only then can we address it, can't we?
Definitely. And I remember for me, it took me so long to become aware of my limitations around money. I grew up with basically my dad teaching me about saving every penny and always saving. And I got to the point where my mindset around money was about, I have to keep it all. I've got to keep it somewhere where I won't touch it. And then when it was there, it's safe. And then I think, okay, I've got a big pot of money, but I'm still thinking I need more. I'm lacking. But I've actually got money and I have to keep putting it in and not touching it, because one day, what if there's no money? So, and that took me a while to realize, hold on, actually, there's enough money. There's more than enough. Okay, and I don't need to use it. And obviously the kind of this old saying of you have to spend money to make money, as long as you're spending in the right places, that is. And it took me a long time to realize that, yes, I can't just keep it in one place doing nothing. I've got to actually utilize it. It's just numbers, it's ones and zeros. Like, I've got to use it to achieve what I want to achieve, to basically make more money, to grow more, not just keep it in a bank account sitting there doing nothing, just because I'm afraid of something happening down the line where I might not have any more.
Saving for a rainy day.
Yeah, saving for a rainy day type of thing. It's quite funny. When we spoke before, you had an interesting take on money, and that kind of the relationship with money is a reflection on the relationship with self. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yes, I can. And actually, you touch upon that, saying when you save, you put the money in one place and you don't really look back at it, and you just add more money. And I would say that is could be identified as a avoidant way of looking at money, because you're saving and you're putting it in a savings account and you're not really looking back at it, and you're not and you're not thinking about spending it. Sometimes it is okay to spend what we save, because life is unpredictable. We never know what's going to happen. So when it comes to money, money relationship, the thing is we can either be avoidant or we can be super attached to the money to the point where we spend it, because we are afraid that if we don't spend it, we will lose it.
And it's interesting because I'm sure you won't mind me sharing
Yeah,
this,
yeah.
like very much that's reflected on how John was. Like he would feel safe in certain situations and secure and think that's the way. That was how his mindset was as well, not just in finance, but in everything. And when you were just talking about there about it being avoidant, he would often avoid any issues that were going on as well. It's like, I mean, does that resonate with you?
Yeah,
I got that right?
yeah, definitely. I would, again, that was me. I would just put it away, forget about it, and avoid looking at it, thinking, okay, just keep it there. Don't even pay attention to it. And then it'll be there for a rainy day. And then if something happens, I'll be freaking out thinking I've got no money. And I think I've got to get more money, or this is coming up. I had loads of it. I was sitting there and I just completely forgot about it. I was avoiding that it was even there. I completely cut it from my memory. And it took me a while to realize, why was I hanging on to it? Like, it didn't make any sense.
That's what you was doing with other stress as well.
Yeah,
right? You was holding on to all that other stress.
Yeah.
As if you was almost saving that for a rainy day. I don't know why, but at some point you obviously noticed that wasn't helpful.
No, it definitely wasn't helpful at all. I think I remember there's a couple of times I've had like zero in my bank account, and I was like stressing out massively. I was causing myself so much stress. I didn't even think about the savings I had.
Yeah.
So all I thought about the bank account I see every day, it was like zero. I was like, oh my God, what do I do? How do I get more money? I didn't even think that I already had money there. Yes. It was a very interesting kind of scenario to be in. And it took me a while to realize that. I think at one point I actually emptied my savings to spend money to be able to do what I wanted, to grow and learn more. And that was a different experience as well when I got to that point, when I thought, actually, this is why I'm saving. This is why I'd save this money, is to help me to kind of take that step and grow more.
To invest in yourself.
Exactly, to invest in myself. And then when my savings went to zero at that time, I didn't worry. It didn't bother me, because I knew what I was spending it on was obviously investing myself, and I knew I was going to get it back at some point, and I could replenish it if I needed to. So it was a lot of years of self-induced stress in every area of my life.
Yes.
For no reason at all. It was crazy.
Do you see that thing often with the people you work with?
Yeah, I do. I see people running away from looking at their bank account. I see people emptying their bank account because they don't want to see the money that's in there. So I see it a lot.
And we've asked our audience for some questions that they might want us to ask you, given your expertise. And we're going to get onto debt very shortly. But the first one question that came up, which I thought was quite interesting, was we have a lot of entrepreneurs that listen to this podcast, and often they're overwhelmed and stressed out, obviously because there's so much involved with being an entrepreneur, but then the financial side of things just freaks them out entirely usually.
Yes.
So the most common thing, and the question here was, when you're investing into your own business, is that classed as an investment, or should they be investing somewhere else?
Well, if you are investing in your business, you're ultimately investing in yourself as well, because if that business is going to create you a massive profit one day that you can take with you, then it is an investment. But investing in the stock market and whatnot could also be, but it really depends on the person, and it really depends on their circumstances right now and their priority.
Yeah, I love that answer, the fact that it depends, because there's so many factors and variables involved for everybody. One
Yeah.
thing that I always thought as well is like, and this is definitely a mindset thing, is, well, I'd rather go all in on myself and our business, right? And rather than then almost like split and then put money in somewhere else, almost like a backup plan. For me, it was like, well, I don't want a backup plan. I don't need a backup plan. I'm going to make this work. Do you think that's a healthy mindset to have when it comes to finance?
Well, when it comes to finances, we are not a big fan of putting all eggs in one basket. So we like to diversify things or spread it out even more. But it's good to invest in your business, but it's also good to put money aside for savings and investments that could eventually grow. So you could take it out and actually invest it in your business again. So it's a whole cash flow. Yeah.
Exactly. I really asked that because that's a big lesson that I had to learn a while back, and definitely a question that obviously our audience are curious about. So I love that answer. I think that's really, really useful. Not having all your eggs in one basket. I mean, that's as common as a saying as saving for a rainy day, isn't it?
Yeah.
So, all right, cool. What was the next question? Do you want to take that?
Yes. Well, so the next question that was asked was around, obviously, tips for being in debt, so like how to come out of debt. But before we speak about that, can you talk about kind of like the effects of debt on our well-being?
Oh, there are a lot of effects when it comes to debt, because debt just leads to stress. I personally know people that don't sleep because they have a massive amount of debt. So it can have physical effects on you, emotional effects. You can be very irritable. It can have psychological effects. You can be stressed, anxious, depressed. So that can have a lot of consequences coming with it.
Do you notice that people that come to you for support, do they link the depression or anxiety with debt specifically, or do you tend to find that there's something else going on there when you work with them?
Not really. At the beginning, they link it to their friends, their family members, whatever person is bothering them at that point. But really, the way we can choose to respond to people, or we can react based on how we feel. And most of the people I've talked with, they react rather than responding. So that is why they never mistake their financial situation for being the main problem, but they might blame it on a family member or a friend or a coworker. And yeah,
that's where it comes back to us saying about being aware, isn't it, in the first place? Because to be
yes.
aware, you have to almost own that as well. You have to take full responsibility for your situation, no matter who else is in the picture, because there's still always something that somebody can do for themselves, isn't there? So what tips would you give to somebody that would help them become debt-free?
Okay, so it depends on who it is, the situation, and where they at in their life. In general, I would say people pay in steps off first. Some people say pay the smallest amount of a loan off first, and that's called the debt snowball method. I like to blend and mix those two things. I'm not really into do one or do the other. I'm more flexible. So I really look at the person, and I really look at case to case how much debt they're in. Sometimes it's beneficial for them to pay the high interest debt off first. And other times it might be more beneficial to them to pay off the smaller loans, so they can create momentum to pay off the bigger ones eventually.
I'm going to ask you a question based on a conversation I had with a client only this morning. Obviously, I won't mention any names. So this person he's done so well when it comes to paying off debt. He had a lot of debts. He, in the end of January, was able to pay off a big loan that he'd had. He paid off a big chunk on a credit card debt that he had, but he still has approximately 1.5K left to pay on his credit card, which is about 6%. But now he wants to get a car on finance, which is more expensive than it needs to be because of the choice of car that he's choosing. Would you, in that scenario, knowing that savings isn't necessarily there, what would you coach him on? Would you suggest something more like paying off the credit card and then getting the finance loan for the car, or what? It's just a real life example that I think could be useful.
Yes. So you said his current debt is on around 1.5K. Yeah. So I would say pay that off first, because it's such a small amount compared to a car loan that's knows how much interest is going to be on that. So I would say pay the 1.5K first. And that seems like a small amount that can be paid off easily, because if you add that to the car loan, it's going to seem massive.
Exactly.
Afterwards. So pay the small loan off that you have left and then go for the car after.
Yeah, nice. That's kind of echoes kind of where the conversation ended up going. But I think it's so important as well, because from a behavior standpoint, yes, I feel like if somebody's in that cycle of getting into debt, getting out of debt almost, then getting into debt again, that is prevalent with this person. It almost interrupts that pattern when they can say, no, all debt is cleared, and now I'm going to consciously choose that this is a need for me now, and they can actually come up with a reasonable reason why. I think that's really useful. Thank you so much for that, Yasmin, because I think that's definitely going to help that person specifically, but other people listening as well.
Yeah.
Definitely. So, Yasmin, is there anything else you'd add to this conversation, or anything you think that our listeners should really know, or really not need to know about kind of like money mindset or like finances and wellness?
Yeah, I mean, I could add more into this conversation forever, but I would say to the people today that prioritize yourself and don't look at what other people have, because typically that's what triggers that part where we want to fit in and we want to be like everyone else. Just surrender and accept the fact that right now you might not get what you want. You eventually get it, but you can't get it at the point you're at. And this just reminded me of this quote by Oprah where she's talking about stress. And she said, all stress comes from resisting what is. So if you keep on resisting the fact that maybe you don't need all these things, then tomorrow you don't know what kind of debt and what kind of money you have to owe because you wanted instant gratification or a 2-second of acceptance from others, when in reality the acceptance has to come from within. You have to tell yourself you're good enough. You have to tell yourself that you're okay, that you're doing, that bright days ahead of you. But also be aware that shame is a real thing that can kill us from within. It is something that eventually leads us to self-sabotage, overspend, and create bad financial situation for ourselves.
That's going to resonate with so many people. I just want to share a good example of my own, of that instant gratification mindset. When I was 20, I worked my butt off to go and spend a year backpacking around Australia. And I had an amazing time. I had a blast. I'd saved up. I did a little bit of work whilst I was there, but honestly, minimal work just to get me to the next location and that kind of thing, probably backpacker style. And it got like I didn't have any debt whatsoever. I'd managed to do the whole trip for the first 10 months with no debt, all from the savings that I had and everything, which I was very proud of. But then it started coming into my mind, well, I'm going to be going home soon. I'm going to be going back to the UK soon. And thinking about it now after listening to you, I think it was definitely that idea of fitting in. I suddenly took a credit card, which I had for emergencies only, and I just maxed out that credit card just to bring back people gifts. Right. And it comes from I think that idea of, at the time, I obviously felt like I needed to come back with stuff. Me just coming back wasn't enough at that time. And it's interesting you saying that, because that instant gratification of how good I felt when I come back and was able to give, I then spent about a year paying off that credit card. And it was so not worth it. The effort and the time that went into paying off that credit card was so unnecessary. And if I ask those people now what gift I bought them when they come back from Australia,
They don't remember.
they do not remember. Exactly. I think it's just a nice, relevant example of what you're talking about. And I promise you, it's just not worth it. The time and the effort that could have been put into something else. And I think the money of investing in yourself or helping, contributing, giving that to somebody else rather than just blowing it like that. In hindsight, is a wonderful thing, isn't it? But yeah, that's my little 2 pence of instant gratification when it comes to money.
That's the danger of the credit card. Yeah.
Exactly. But I think a lot of people relate to that, even as like you come to the holiday times when everyone starts buying presents for each other and they go overboard and they don't have the money to the savings or the money to buy the presents they buy, and they think, okay, once a year, max out the credit card, put it on finance, whatever it is, buy all these presents that people, again, I'm going to remember, probably not going to use for very long, or might not even appreciate, and then end up for the next year paying everything back and then doing the same thing again next year. It's just a vicious cycle for, again, for no reason. It's where you could use that to then better yourself or help someone else as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so interesting. I mean, like you said, you could talk about this forever. But listen, I'm curious to know, for you personally, I know you said you've been so fortunate to have this kind of education and knowledge in your world, which is incredible. But outside of maybe the finance space, or even inside, it's up to you. In the last 5 years, what kind of new belief or behavior or habit has most improved your life personally?
I think when COVID happened, I really started focusing on myself. I got one-on-one coaching, I got life coaching, group coaching as well. And what I learned was what I preach today, which is be okay with yourself. There's nothing wrong with you. You are just fine. All those thoughts coming into your head that you're not good enough or you're not this or that is really the ego trying to feed this story of who you should be in order not to change, because our brains are not wired for change. They are wired to just make you stay in the same place forever. So yeah, that's what I learned this year.
Brilliant. I love that so much.
Definitely. That is absolutely true. And again, you can rewire your brain. The more you get out your comfort zone, start pushing yourself and start being comfortable with the uncomfortable, then you start to enjoy it more. You start to push yourself even more, and take yourself into those different areas that do make you feel uncomfortable, because you can do it. And like you said, you basically you are enough. Whatever you go into, you are enough, and you know you're gonna figure it out. More than enough. Definitely, that's definitely perfect. Yeah, awesome. So tell for the people listening, tell them obviously where they can find you. So if they want to reach out to you to ask you questions around finance, or kind of just seek out your advice to help them become debt free and kind of look into that money mindset, is where can they find you?
Okay, so they can find me on Instagram, the Yasmin Osman. Pretty straightforward. It's just the and my first and my last name. I'm sure it would be on the show notes.
Yes.
And they can find me on LinkedIn.
Amazing.
Awesome.
Yeah, absolutely. Those links will be on the show notes, and it's going to be definitely, I think, quite a few people coming over to contact you. I know you're running a beta program right now for an online course. Is that right?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. So they can go on over there and check you out and see how they can come before more confident with their cash and how you can support them moving forwards.
Yeah.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on the show. We've loved having you here. And who knows, if we get more questions after this, hopefully we'll get you on again.
Yes.